Welcome to yet another FPL video. Now, this is going to be the best replacements for Kevin De Bruyne, who, as you well know now, I think anyway.
All right, Nate, just pretend for a minute that I don't really care about any of that stuff and cut to the chase, would you?
He is out for 2 to 3 weeks, it seems, with a small hamstring tear. And this means that even for Game Week 23, when Manchester City play Liverpool, Kevin De Bruyne has a serious doubt for that game too. And with all the fixtures that Manchester City have coming up, and it's one of the main reasons we did bring him in, you know, he's going to miss all of them. And let's just have a quick run through them. I mean, they've got West Brom away next, then Sheffield at home and Burnley away. 3 great chances to captain De Bruyne, but now it just doesn't seem possible. And what I'm going to be doing here is highlighting the best replacements for him from various teams, and a lot of people are very interested in Leicester assets, for example, and stuff like that. I'll be talking about them, but it's also very important to note that you'll probably want to get Kevin De Bruyne back in, because after Game Week 22, I mean, you would expect De Bruyne to be back by Game Week 23 or 24, based on, you know, the kind of initial diagnosis that they've given. And Manchester City have double game weeks coming up, and most likely they'll be in game weeks 24, 26 and 27. Now, what could those games be? So it looks like in game week 24, obviously, Manchester City are definitely facing Tottenham unless, obviously, COVID comes in the way. But they could also face Everton or Southampton. Now, that's quite a difficult double game week, but you could still expect some points from Manchester City assets. In game week 26, this is really interesting. They do face West Ham at home, and they have an amazing record against West Ham. And the other fixture would be either Wolves, Everton or Southampton. And in game week 27, Man United at home, very difficult fixture, and to be honest, Manchester City tend to struggle at home against Manchester United, and apart from that, they could also face the same teams, Wolves, Everton or Southampton, so that could be their double game weeks. Game week 26 looks like the best time, obviously, to have triple City. And yeah, I mean, just great fixtures all round. I know West Ham have been good this season, but you would still expect Manchester City to win. With the other two, Tottenham, not so sure, because obviously Tottenham have already beaten them this season, and the way that Mourinho sets up his team, it might, you know, give Spurs another result against Pep Guardiola. And then with Manchester United, same thing really. Oli loves to play on the counter-attack away from home, and they've gotten some great results at the Etihad over the years. So that's just something to bear in mind. But straight off, I'm going to have to say Grealish is one of the standout replacements for him, and he's pretty much, the 4th top scorer in terms of FPL points. The problem with him is that he's 1 yellow card away from suspension, and the threshold of yellow cards, so obviously you need 5 yellow cards to obviously be suspended. The problem with Grealish and Aston Villa is that they haven't played 19 games yet, so Grealish literally has to go the next 3 or 4 games without getting a yellow card in order to avoid any suspensions. Will he do that? Hopefully he does, but that is something to consider. I have him in my normal team anyway. And another thing, obviously, to consider is that Grealish is by far the best player at Villa. He creates so many chances for other people, and even sometimes he misses a lot of chances, if we're being honest, and he could be on so many more points if he was clinical and if his teammates were. But Grealish is still one of the best assets, but obviously be aware and be cautious about the yellow card. It could obviously backfire if you do bring him in, but I still think he's one of the best replacements for him. And then moving on to Manchester City assets, really, a lot of people will be going from De Bruyne to Sterling, for example, and I do recommend it, or at least going for a Manchester City asset because of the fixtures. And you would expect a bit less of Pep Roulette, but obviously it's a bit foolish to kind of anticipate what Pep is going to do. But Sterling can still do really well. He's got the fixtures and picking up a bit of form. Foden as well. I have to say he's another one you could go for. Foden and Gundogan. I'd say one of those 3 City assets in midfield. I would recommend one of them. Foden would be my ideal pick. But Sterling, obviously it's quite easy, you know, you could literally just do a straight swap between Sterling and De Bruyne when you feel like it, but obviously the fixtures do turn soon, and you probably would want to have De Bruyne over Sterling from Game Week 23 onwards if De Bruyne is available then. And as for Foden, he just offers such great value when he does play. The problem with him is that he plays 2 games in a row, then he gets benched, but you would expect Foden to start in at least 2 of those next 3 games, so he would be my ideal pick for Manchester City. Then it'd be Sterling. Gundogan, he's been doing really well. He scored a penalty against Aston Villa, and for his price, is doing exceptionally well. But I would probably say that he's one of the worst assets that you could get from Manchester City. I mean, if you look at it logically, in terms of points, he's pretty much up there with De Bruyne, with Sterling and all of that in the last few game weeks. But still, I don't know. I just think that Sterling and Foden would probably be more ideal picks. But Gundogan, certainly still a great pick, and you could go for him. But yeah, Foden is my ideal choice. And then another one, and by the way, I have to say a quick disclaimer, Bruno Fernandes, if you don't have him already, just get him in. And he's someone who's just so obvious and most people will have him, and he's just one of the best assets in the game. Same with Salah, although obviously a lot of people won't be favouring him at the moment because of his poor run. But yeah, Bruno Fernandes, despite obviously him kind of declining with Pogba playing at the same time, he is still the top scorer out of any FPL midfielder. So yeah, Bruno Fernandes. But the second best option you can get from Manchester United, apart from maybe a Luke Shaw, is Marcus Rashford. I know he got benched against Fulham, but he's fit, he's ready to go against Sheffield unless something happens. And there's some good fixtures there. I know Arsenal is quite tough at the moment anyway. Southampton at home, Everton at home, but then some great fixtures. West Brom away, Newcastle at home, you would expect some damage there. And even Chelsea away that you see after, and Manchester City away. Rashford has great records against them, especially at their ground. So yeah, I wouldn't write this guy off. Obviously, when you're looking at his price bracket, obviously the other option is Son, and I will go into him in a bit. But Rashford is still one of the best options you can get. And even if you're doubling up a Manchester United attack, I still think that's a viable strategy with the fixtures that they have. I do think, in terms of away performances anyway, I mean, they're one of the highest scorers. But obviously, if you had to pick one, Bruno Fernandes is the one. If you can't quite reach to that price, then yeah, you could go for Rashford. But then again, if you're getting rid of De Bruyne, you could literally go to any midfielder that you want, apart from maybe Salah. So I would recommend going for Bruno, but Rashford is obviously the next best thing. And doubling up on Manchester United attack, I would recommend it for sure. And Leicester assets, everyone's talking to me about Leicester assets at the moment, and that's understandable. They're pretty much up there. They were top of the league until Manchester City won, and then until Manchester United won. It's a bit of a yo-yo at the moment, this Premier League. But Maddison and Barnes, and I've always been telling people this in terms of Leicester assets, you want, out of these four players, maybe one of them if you can. Vardy, kind of obvious, Justin, and Maddison and Barnes. But obviously we're talking about midfielders here specifically, so it has to be between Maddison and Barnes. And in terms of underlying statistics, apart from creativity, Barnes pretty much trumps Maddison in every aspect in terms of goal threat, shots in the box, shots on target, and to be honest, Barnes is always that type of player who posts such great underlying statistics, but always seems to underperform them. With Maddison, he's overperforming his statistics at the moment, and it's something they did last season. But for the first time ever, he scored in 3 consecutive Premier League games, and they all come from basically free shots. So he's been very clinical, and he said in his interview after the game against Chelsea that he's been working on his timing into the box. So that's something to obviously keep an eye on, but he hasn't really had any assists. But with James Maddison, he is really, really creative, obviously. He's on set pieces, and you would expect the assists to go up. But yeah, he's having a decent season. Obviously, he's going under the radar because it's only really recently that he's really pushing up the rankings in terms of FPL points. But Maddison and Barnes, I would recommend them. If I had to pick one, I probably would go for Maddison because of his form, because of how clinical he is at the moment, the runs he's making, and his creativity. But long term, maybe if you want a bit more reliability in terms of the statistics they're going to bring, because Maddison can be a bit of a stats buster as well, similar to Vardy. Barnes is more of a, the opposite end of the spectrum. Maybe he's a bit more reliable in that way, if you know what I mean. You could go for Barnes, but I just think at the moment Maddison would be my pick from the Leicester assets. But you can't really go wrong with either of them. And yeah, they're very similar price. So I would probably go for Maddison, but both really, really good, offering great value. And Barnes, he's been pretty consistent all season, but obviously sometimes, people bring him in ahead of a West Brom game, for example, then he doesn't deliver. That is the problem with Barnes. And to be honest, with Leicester assets, how long can they maintain this? Because you saw last season, they were so good up until December, and then they kind of crumbled, and they fell out of second and out of the top 4 altogether. So something to bear in mind. And finally, really, it has to be, this is probably the most obvious pick here, and he's so heavily owned, Heung-min Son, and, he's still nearly 60% owned, despite, obviously, the double game week, a lot of people bringing him out for De Bruyne, me included, and now a lot of people are going to be bringing him back in for sure, and yeah, just before recently, he was the highest scoring player in the entire game in terms of FPL points, and whenever Spurs score, it's going to be either scored or assisted by Son or Kane pretty much. So if you have one of them, it's fine. The only kind of downside to getting Son in now is that he has Liverpool at home and he's got some tough fixtures coming up as well, like Chelsea at home and Manchester City away. But he can still do damage in all of them. And I've got a bit of a dilemma in my team, and I'll be showing you in a bit But yeah, Son is probably my ideal pick to get back. Obviously, the fixtures aren't ideal, but they've got some double game weeks to come in the future, and they involve the likes of Fulham and Aston Villa. So, they're not too bad. Obviously, the fixtures aren't great, but Son is fixture proof. And he's just so consistent, and he's just been so good. He's performing like an 11 or 12 million pound player. There's not much more that needs to be said about Heung-min Son. And in terms of conversion rate, pretty much one of the highest in Europe. I know against Fulham he was really lackluster, but that's one of the very few examples you can point towards this season. So Son would probably be my ideal pick. But if you want to go something different, or if you already have him, go for Foden, maybe Sterling, Rashford or Maddison. Those would be my ideal picks. Barnes is still really good, even Gundogan and Grealish if you don't have them already. But I think all of those midfielders that I just mentioned, I think they are the best options you can go for to replace Kevin De Bruyne. And obviously, like I said at the beginning of the video, remember that the double game weeks that Manchester City have coming up, that might obviously sway you to trying to bring in Kevin De Bruyne back in, or maybe a Foden or a Sterling or a Gundogan. So bear all of that in mind. And in terms of my team quickly, I'm going to obviously talk about the impact obviously now. In hindsight now, what I would have done, and with Antonio not even going up in price once, which is very surprising, I wouldn't have obviously got rid of Zuma for Mitchell. I would have just kept that and saved that -4. And I would have just done a straight swap from De Bruyne to Son probably. And I could have also gotten Antonio. But now if I do want to get Son in, that's another -4. And that means a -8 overall, which isn't ideal. I hate taking hits. But obviously when you make early transfers, you're always running the risk. And this season with the amount of games, it's just no surprise. But just wait for official confirmation first with De Bruyne, but it does seem he's going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks, which is a big shame. Obviously, he was pretty much, 3 or 4 minutes away from getting that clean sheet point and the extra point for playing 60 minutes, but he missed out on those, and a lot of people captained him, including myself, and a lot of people triple captained him, so a very big shame. Now, obviously, that changes my team in terms of captaining Bruno now. That's going to be the obvious pick. In terms of vice-captaincy, not too sure. It could be Antonio or Grealish, but I don't really like captaining these kind of, more budget players. The ones that are obviously less consistent. I'll probably go for a Salah or Kane in terms of vice-captaincy, or Son if I bring him in. But yeah, that is something to think about. And I know it's a -8, but I generally am considering getting in Son for De Bruyne and just leaving it there. And then apart from that, really, I'll have a lot of money left over, so maybe I could do Mitchell to a Manchester United defender like Shaw or Wan-Bissaka. I could do that, and I could obviously move Bissouma to a Soucek or a Saka or a Smith Rowe. I could do a lot of stuff now. The rest is obviously I'm really happy with it. I could obviously maybe get a second keeper that obviously plays, but not too bothered about that. I'm happy with Martinez most weeks. And by the way, that guy, he was on 11 points pretty much, and then the clean sheet got wiped out after a dubious decision. Very, very weird, but it is what it is. But very happy with this team overall. Like I said, there's only a few little minor gripes I have, such as the Mitchell transfer and stuff like that, and maybe changing Bissouma. Apart from that, really happy with my team. Let me know what your situation is like, and who are you going to bring in for Kevin De Bruyne? Is there anyone that I have missed? If you have, let me know, and I will obviously reply. There's a lot of options you can go for. That's the thing. There's obviously other players like Neto, for example. Some people would consider Ward-Prowse, although I wouldn't. But a lot of high-scoring players who can do the business and obviously fill that Kevin De Bruyne void. And yeah, it's just such a big shame, obviously, because for the next 3, I think Kevin De Bruyne could have been in for some double digits. But it is what it is, and hopefully he's back soon. And yeah, obviously everyone's going to be in a rush to get him back in when that happens. But yeah, FPL has just been a yo-yo this season. And if there's any lesson that you can obviously take from my videos, it's don't make early transfers if you can help it. The way I saw it, obviously, is I wanted to not be priced out of Antonio. Because obviously if I didn't do that move then and Antonio rose up, I wouldn't have been able to afford him. But now with De Bruyne injured, I could literally afford him no matter what. So obviously it's a mistake to make those early transfers, but it is what it is. I'm happy with my team. But yeah, just having De Bruyne there, so much money and not playing, just doesn't sit right with me. And I do think Son could do something against Liverpool actually, which is why I may just end up going for it. But a -8 is obviously going to affect my rank once again, and it's not going to be ideal. But thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, smash the like button, and if you enjoy all this content, why not subscribe? It costs nothing, and share this video around with everyone who loves FPL. But until next time, good luck for the rest of Game Week 20, or should I say 19. It's still going on. I mean, it's the longest going week I've pretty much seen in a long time. And yeah, good luck with Game Week 20, and I'll see you next time.